Hi, my name's Tricia Yates, and this video is of my young mare Delilah and her progress so far in working hand and lunging. I purchased Delilah as a 3.5-year-old, and this video was taken just a couple of months later. And she came to me completely green, untrained, unbroke, which is what I wanted. It means I didn't have to undo any previous bad training. But I did have to teach her how to lunge, concentrating on getting her to stay out on the end of the line and staying forward, which you can see she's doing a pretty good job with. And I chose to start her in a lunging cavesson as opposed to a halter because I find they're a little more stable on the horse's head. They don't move around as much. And you can see she's just starting to get the concept of stretching down in this first clip. And so for where she's at, I'm pretty happy. And then in this next clip, you could see I've added a surcingle to get her used to that feeling of something around her belly, getting her ready to carry a saddle. I still have her in the lunging cavesson, but I have added a bridle underneath it just to get her used to carrying a bit and having that in her mouth. And you can see her stretch is starting to get much deeper. She's maintaining a pretty nice rhythm in the walk, and she's even starting to get that head bob. And again, with not having to undo any previous bad training, it made it much easier to get this consistent. And in this clip, taken a couple of months later, you can see that I've now added the bridle and I'm looping the rein up over her poll and attaching it to the bit ring on the other side. And this simulates what I'll be asking once I get on her. So if I put a little contact on that lunge line, she's going to feel that pressure on the corners of her mouth from the bit. And when she starts to stretch down and forward, that's released, so that she'll have an understanding of it when I start to ride. And then she went through this phase. This was taken at a clinic that I took with Karen, where she decided that she wanted to rebel. And she kept this phase up for a few weeks. She's a young horse. I think she was testing boundaries. And I just put this in there to show that it's not all plain sailing, that sometimes we hit a wall and we have a few snags, but if we stay consistent, they'll come through the other side and get better. And now here she is doing in-hand work, and I think this was taken a couple of months ago, just before her 5th birthday. And in the in-hand work, you'll see me make lots of little adjustments with my outside hand, which go in this direction as my right hand, right there. And that is to keep that outside rein back closer to her withers and not let it slide down the neck, which also makes it easier then to maintain a light contact on it when needed. And then to take up the contact of that rein, I will bring that hand down more towards her legs to take out the slack and feel that weight of the rein contact right there. And then pick up that inside rein if I need to and send her forward into that contact until she starts to stretch down and forward. And then I will release that contact and go with her. But at this point, I don't want to throw that contact away. On some horses that are very first learning this, you have to give a lot to give them a big reward, so they start to understand it. But she's at the point with her understanding that I want to try and maintain a light weight of the rein contact. And her stretch is staying pretty consistent, as is her rhythm. And every now and again you'll see me glance back and take a look at her hind end, because after all, that is what we need to concentrate on. I think we sometimes get stuck looking at the head and neck and the stretch, but really it's the hind end that we want to concentrate on. See if those strides are getting longer and deeper. And so here I'm going to start to ask her for a leg yield. And I ask for the leg yield by turning early from that inside, turning early from the rail, establishing a little bend with that inside rein, asking it to soften her jaw to the inside, and then adding the contact of the outside rein and using my whip when needed to give her a little tap to ask her to step under herself with that inside hind. And the timing of when you ask is important. You want to ask with that whip when that inside hind leg is leaving the ground, because that's the leg we want to influence. And the best time to do that, obviously, is when it's coming from the ground. It would be the same under saddle if you're asking for the leg yield. You'd add the leg now, now. And in that second leg yield, she stepped over and under herself a little better with that hind end. She did get a tiny little bit overbent at times, which she is prone to do sometimes. So to correct that, I will try and add a little contact on my outside rein and make sure I'm not over pulling with my inside rein. And right there, she's moving over, but she's not quite stepping as deeply under herself as I would like. So I'm going to try that one more time. And the other thing I'm trying to do is make sure she doesn't just give me all head and neck. And I ask for that rein. I don't want it to overbend. So you see me there adding a little outside rein as she starts to get a little overbend. And there she starts to correct that angle a little bit. Good, and takes a couple of nice deep steps under with that inside hind. So I'm happy with that for where she's at. So now I'm going to go ahead and ask her for a shoulder in. So I'm going to take it to the rail and then again establish a softening off that inside rein, or inside bend. And then use that outside rein to ask her to step her outside shoulder off the rail towards the centre a little. And I want to try and maintain the same angle through her head and neck as through her shoulders. A lot of the times they're prone to wanting to just give you all head and neck and a huge bend without bringing the shoulders off the rail. And if I feel that happening, I'm going to try and correct that with the outside rein. And unfortunately, the footing in this arena, you can see there's a little trench developing on the outside. So I'm asking her for the shoulder in there. And she's staying nice and relaxed through that. But I think she's struggling a little bit with the footing, so I decide to abandon that right there. And I'm going to ask again on this next side. The footing on this other side is better. Unfortunately, this was towards the end of the day, and the arena only gets groomed in the mornings. So here I'm establishing the bend, adding that inside rein, using the whip to keep her forward and also to hold her over to the rail so she doesn't. So now we're going to switch directions and work her to the right. And this horse is definitely a little stiffer, tracking right, as are most horses. And she'll sometimes want to counter bend a little bit or hang on the inside rein. So first I'm just establishing the stretch again, getting the rhythm. There, she's looks like she's taken really nice deep steps under herself in the walk. And the nice thing about having a mare that was never trained is that I am not having to undo any previous bad training. She's never had any bad experiences with harsh contact or bits or anything like that. So there's no defensive behavior or any other stuff like that, which I've had to deal with most of the other horses that I've had to work. So I think it means that she's progressed a little quicker than some of the other horses. You have to spend a lot of time undoing previous damage. So here I'm going to start to ask for a leg yield to the left. And so she tries to hang on the rein a little. So she's a little over bent there, but I'm trying to keep hold of that rein and get her to soften to it a little bit, not to kind of brace against it and want to pull her head to the outside. So yes, she was a little over bent there, but if I wanted to maintain that contact until she softened a little. Just going to ask that leg yield again. And her shoulders are leading a little, and then right there I'd made a correction through the outside rein to try and get that hip to catch up. We want the shoulder to lead slightly in the leg yield, but not so much that they're just dropping their weight to that outside shoulder and kind of falling over. You want them to stay nice and balanced. And again there, she may look a little overbent. I'm just trying to get her to soften off that outside rein and then try and correct the bend a little. Inside rein and correct the bend a little with the outside rein. And then we'll try that one more time. And there she's taken deeper steps under with that inside hind. And so now I'm going to ask her for a little shoulder in. So try and establish a little bend through that inside rein. And she's hanging on it a little, so I'm trying to get her to soften. And then use the outside rein to ask her to step that shoulder off. I'm going this direction. If I feel like she's trying to barge a little with that inside shoulder, you'll see me pick that inside hand up really high, and that helps with that. Pick that hand up high and add a little whip. It helps them step over. Now I didn't ask her for the shoulder in on this side, just because at this stage I feel like she needs the support of the rail so that she doesn't just swing her hip out. So I'm just going to wait until I get to the better footing on this side of the rail and ask her again one more time. And here the stretch is really nice. Get that little bend. That response was better. Tiny bit, a little bit overbent. I'm trying to get her to soften off that inside rein. Add a little outside rein. There. So I'm happy with that for her in-hand work. So I'm going to move on to lunging. So when I first start the lunge work, I might stay a little closer to her and walk with her. I have a little more control that way. I can influence her a little better until she starts to steady into the nice stretch and nice rhythm. Excuse me. So there she's starting to stretch down. She could do with a little more activity. Just going to ask her to walk on a little. So there she kicked out a little when I touched her with the whip to ask her for a little more activity. And this mare is a very, very strong-willed little horse. Although I haven't had to undo any bad training, she does have a very strong will. So right there, I asked her to pick up the trot, and again, she kicked out a little. So I immediately just touch her again with the whip and send her forward to let her know that that's not the response I wanted, and that kind of behavior isn't going to get me to stop asking her to do what I want her to do. And so I'm walking with her to keep the circle pretty big. She's still 4 years old in this video, and I don't like to keep working her on small circles. So I'm trying to keep those circles a little larger and walk with her so I can still maintain a good control. And the stretch is pretty nice here. And at times you'll see she starts to lift her head. She does get a little distracted. I asked her to move forward and she broke into the canter. So I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm just going to stop moving with her until she comes back down to the trot. And that improved the trot a little. She was being a little lazy, not quite using herself enough. There, that's a pretty nice trot. And with her being a young horse, she is easily distracted, which is one of the biggest issues we have to work with this mare. But on the whole, I'm happy with how this trot is looking. And if her head does come up, you'll see I simply take contact through that lunge line, which is mimicking what the reins would do. And I have the lunge line over her poll attached to the outside bit ring. So not only does she feel the bit lift up into the corners of her mouth when I add a little contact or passive resistance through that rein, she also feels it on her poll, which will help her stretch down and forward. Right there, she was pulling to the outside a little, so I just held a little passive resistance until she softened. And I'm pretty happy with this trot work. Now she's maintaining a nice steady rhythm. For the most part, she's being consistent in the stretch. She's nice and relaxed here. When she does come down, the nose is out. Times you'll see that little head bob where she fully releases through the pole. And she could do with having a tiny bit more activity in her hind legs. So I'm going to try and use the whip and send her forward to see if I can get that. And sometimes if I don't, I might try and canter her right there. We're up into the canter transition. And I'm not doing a lot of cantering with her at this point. You'll see she's a little on her forehand. She struggles just a little with her balance in the canter. But that's not surprising given her age and where she's at with her training. Right there, you see her struggling a little bit. She almost falls out of it. But I do it to see where she's at, and also because you see right there, it did help with the activation in her hind end a little. It improves the quality of the trot sometimes. I think it loosens something up a little and just allows them to be able to step under a little deeper and activate the hocks just a little more. So I'm just trying to get her to go back down and give me a nice consistent circle at the trot. So I end on something good, go in this direction. And when I feel like I've got that, I'm going to ask her to walk. So when I ask her to walk, I just stop moving with her and use my voice. Then I'm going to ask her to stop. And we're still working on the stop. So I just patiently stand still and wait, asking her to hoe until she stops all 4 feet, right there. So I'm going to go ahead and switch sides and work her to the right. And again, the right is her more difficult side, as it is with most horses. So starting out, I'm going to stay a little bit closer to her at first. Just establishing the stretch. There you see, she kicks out against the whip when I asked her to get a little more active with the walk. So I just stop my feet. I don't go with her until she comes back to the walk. This mare is rather sassy. She's very, very strong-willed. So when things like that happen, I don't make a big deal about it. I simply tap her again with the whip so that she knows that that kind of behavior isn't going to stop me asking. But if we make a big deal out of these things, the horses tend to make a bigger deal about it too. So when her head is up, again, I'm just have a light contact through that lunge line, sending her forward through the whip, which will bring that contact off to the corners of her mouth on the bit and on her pole, which will help her encourage her to stretch. And when she does, I will release that contact. And she's not quite as consistent going this direction as she was going the other, but that's fairly normal for her. And the other thing I'm working with this horse is she she's young and she does tend to get a little distracted at times if something's going on outside the arena. We just try and work her through it. But the trot's starting to look nicer. Right there. So again, her head comes up. I'm going to send her forward and then take a little contact. She's a little more distracted this direction. If I remember correctly, I think there was something going on outside of the arena. But she has to learn to work through that stuff and stay consistent regardless. So you just have to stay patient. There, that's starting to look better. And I ask for the canter transition. Again, you can see she struggles just a little with maintaining the balance and not dropping onto her forehand. And at times you'll see like she almost looks like she's about to drop out of the canter. And again, that will come with time and as she strengthens. And so I bring her back down to the trot. And again, I think the activity of the trot gets just a little better after the canter. And the consistency of the stretch was starting to get a little better there. So now I'm asking her to come down to the walk, and you can see I stop following, stop my feet, use my voice, and I'm going to ask her to hoe. I'm just getting the stretch first at the walk to make sure she ends on a nice relaxed note. And now asking her to stop. Almost a square stop. So again, my name's Tricia Yates and this is my mare Delilah. And this is my first submission.